morning, Brooklyn. I was just reminded, happy Pride Week. Pride weekends, right? Where's Sally? Sally, thank you. So, you don't have to run. I just want to thank you. I want to thank you because Sally sent me an email that said, tell your story. And I've been on the road. I just came back from an awesome time in Paris. And I didn't have a lot of time to prep for this. And so when I read that email, it really helped me because that to me is where our power is in our story. And so thank you for inviting me to do that right away. So I was born a blonde Black girl in Chocolate City, AKA DC. So I'm so glad DC kind of gave us this theme. And being blonde and Black is sort of a metaphor for my story. And I am not the result of an all-white father or an all-Black mother, which is the common, idea. I am the result of a great American horror story and a great American love story. Both of my parents are very light-skinned Black people. And my mother was raised under the paper bag rule. Raise your hand if you know what the paper bag rule is. So part of that, so that's why I present the way that I present, or that I look the way that I look, because my grandparents grew up under the terrorism of Jim Crow South. And as a result of living for generations in a terrorized territory, you make decisions to survive. And one of those decisions to survive is this idea of paper bag, and that you would not marry or have children with anyone darker than a paper bag. Because for my grandmother, to be light meant to live. That's simple. Because for her and her family members who were across the spectrum in terms of skin tone, the dark ones could disappear in the night. The darker ones could be hung by a tree. Literally, this is what they live. And this is not to just bring everybody down. This is to, what I like about how I walk through the world, that what I like about being a Black blonde girl is because it is the metaphor of what happened here, what the truth of this great American story is. And it's not, this is the time, this is the generation, we're not afraid to talk about it. We're not afraid to say that I exist because of a terrorist society. That's why I look like this. And great love, obviously. There's that part. But my grandmother has, to the day that she died, had PTSD. When you're 14 years old and you're walking down the street in Sumter, South Carolina, and you see a body smoldering, hanging from a tree, who do you then get to be? What happens to how you organize life? How do you, and there is no treatment. After the Civil Rights Bill passed, no one said, okay, now let's help all these people that lived in a terrorist society. That's the Great Migration out of the South to Chicago, to New York was very much like what's happening in Syria. It wasn't just because people wanted to work in the factories. They were fleeing for their lives. My grandparents fled for their lives to Philadelphia. And as a result of two light-skinned people, that's what we call light-skinned. I was so, I'm light-skinned, and I was so light-skinned, my brother used to say I was opalescent. But what happens as a result of having parents that were raised by parents who were survivors, who were terrorist survivors, is we gotta work stuff out. No, because there's a little girl in a very cute jumpsuit over there that I'm thinking about. How? How do we work that out? How do we work that out? Particularly because we weren't taught that in school. Who in school was really taught about the terrorism of Jim Crow? Like in high school? Nobody called it that. So I'm gonna fast forward to Rachel Dolezal. And she drove me insane. So, and I was having a moment because I do commentary on CNN, particularly about race and gender and all those intersections. And so when Rachel Dolezal hit the scene, okay, I was having a Tina Fey moment when she realized that she looked like Sarah Palin. Like, it was the same thing, right? Like, look at me, like, so they were like, we gotta call Michaela to talk about this. So there I was, split screen, Rachel, because her weaves were popping. Like, let's be clear. She was a crazy white girl, but her hair, no shade. So she infuriated me. And I remember calling my mother because I was having to go on again. And the morning that I was supposed to go on the New Day, they were gonna talk about, is trans race a thing? And I almost didn't do it because I was so angry that we were even that this one crazy chick, because she was crazy, she had all these weird conspiracy theories, she was monkeys, all kinds of stuff, was going to challenge the idea with no case studies, with no research, with no people dying or being on the front lines, in the middle of this big trans conversation, is trans race a thing? And so I was infuriated. So whenever I'm infuriated like that, I call my mama, because my mama is dope. And I was like, Mommy, why am I so mad? And she keeps saying, I own my blackness, I own my blackness. And so my mother recalled, and she's saying she's black, she's Indian, she's da-da-da-da. And so first of all, my mother recalled, and she said, who Rachel Dolezal said she was, meaning her sort of racial mix, is literally what I am. So there's that. Then she said, and I said, she's, this idea that she owned it, so that word was what was triggering something. And so my mother recalled a story of my grandparents as children, particularly my grandmother, where her father was very brown and had kind of straight hair, and her mother was Irish and Syrian. And the KKK would, with regularity, come to their house in the night, just like the movies. Like that stuff was real. I'm so sorry, little girl in a jumpsuit. Because when you tell the truth, sometimes that comes out. So anyway, one day, my great-grandfather came out on the porch with a shotgun, because they were 4 of them on horses, the burning stuff, and was just like, what's it gonna be? we can't, we're going to figure this out. And they left, meaning the KKK left. And shortly after that, everyone, again, that migration happened. So my mother had just told me that story. That is terrorism. Y'all understand that, right? That's what that is. So I get to, so I hang up with the phone, because what my mother said is she can't own our ancestors. I was like, thank you, Mom. That's my line. That's what I'm gonna say. She can own it. She can't own our story. She can't own what happened there. So my mom smoothed me out. I was ready, had my line. And then Charleston happened that night. The night before I was supposed to go on and talk about Rachel Dolezal. And this was on top of so many stories that I was doing at CNN at the time. It was, from Trayvon Martin all the way to Charleston. It was just one massacre, one blunder after the other. And something about Charleston was so horrific. I'm still not over that, y'all. Like, it's a year. I can't even fully process Orlando because I'm still in Charleston. And part of it is because of that conversation I just had with my mother that happens in South Carolina, that happened in my family, this happened to people on the regular. This was their life. So, and the fact that all the symbolism, the church, the assassination, the families massacred. So what was interesting about that moment is I did not have time to be prepped by the producer about what my feelings were about Charleston, because that's kind of what happens, right? Because it happened overnight. I was there, and I thought that they were gonna cancel me. Because I'm like, I know we're not talking about that crazy chick after what happened. Like, she was off the news after that. But they kept me on to talk about Charleston. And so it was 6:45 in the morning, maybe, yeah. So it was kind of the first conversation about Charleston. And I remember sitting there kind of in a fog. I was full of so much sorrow that it was difficult to be in the moment. And I almost don't remember how Chris Cuomo kind of teed up the story. But I remember him saying tragedy and shooter. And then they threw to me, and I said, that train wreck on Amtrak, that was a tragedy. This was terrorism, and he is a terrorist. And that was an assassination. And I remember seeing the cameraman's face go white because no one had called a white, blonde American boy a terrorist on television. And no one had called what that was at that time, like right in real time, not, 20 essays later, not Ta-Nehisi in The Atlantic. It was on CNN in the morning as soon as it happened. Because it was just by sheer definition. This wasn't emotional. This is like, I looked up what is terrorism, what is a terrorist act. He was connected to other organizations. He had insignia, the whole thing. And what is an assassination? An assassination is when you deliberately kill an elected official. That's the simple definition. And that's what Pinckney was. He was an elected official. So that was terrorism and an assassination. And I just called it what it was. That's what happened a year ago, right in South Carolina. So that was probably the hardest day I've ever had in media, because after I did that, they were like, Michaela, can we see you? Like, can you stay right there? Because all of a sudden, all these emails started going back. Is it terrorism? Is he a terrorist? What do you do? Like we're so easy. Like, if his name was Mohammed, be clear. Be clear. He would have been, we would have had T-shirts, like, terrorists. It's right up here. If the gentleman who had, gentlemen, I don't know why that came out of my mouth. If the murderer who took that plane down, you remember the plane went down with 108 people on it? If his name had been Mohammed, he would have been a terrorist, so clear. But this little blonde boy with the bowl cut, they were having a hard, like, emails had to go around. So anyway, so by 3 o'clock, that was, the headlines was, what is homegrown terrorism? Anyway, so I'm in between sets, completely, like, crying from an ancient place, and then getting my makeup done again, and then coming on and talking about it, and crying from an ancient place, and then getting my makeup done and starting it. And I'm realizing that none of my other commentators are having this process that I'm having. They're talking about it like the horror that it is. But I'm talking about, like, my ancestors are like, this is happening to us again, and what is this generation gonna do about it? That's what was, so I realized that I was having compassion fatigue. Charleston took me out, basically. And I decided that I had to create some content that for me was about Black girl joy. That was about what is it that connects us? Because this was the last story, like I almost couldn't take this story. Because not to say that people weren't dying and disappearing, and Trayvons and Mike Browns and Sandra Bland's and Rakia McBoys have ever stopped happening. It's just now we know. We have this, everyone can be a reporter, everyone can show us on their telephone. We're processing it, in a constant loop. Like, I watched that man in South Carolina again get shot in the back by the police, like, over and over and over and over again. And I saw Mike Brown in a pool of blood in the middle of a neighborhood in middle America over and over again. It's not like Emmett Till, where you had to look at it in the New York Times, or you had to find The Jet magazine. Y'all know it's The Jet, right? Give you some cultural, You know what I mean? Like, you had to kind of want to know. And it's only Black bodies in pools of blood that we're seeing over and over again in between, I don't know, Cialis commercials, right? So I decided I had to I had to create some other stories. And I wanted to find, what is that one thing that, whether you're from Detroit or Dakar, whether you live in the pink houses or in the White House, that connects us, me Black girls. And that was our hair. Yeah, she's like, so very quickly, this had been on my laptop as a document for a while. And it's basically like the Vagina Monologues, but about hair. Meaning using the same sort of tool to tell our story about our identity and our humanity through the lens of our hair. And, oh, thank you. I didn't even have that. So I did a series of 6 as mini mobile docs. They launched in March as part of Women's History Month, and in celebration of Madam C.J. Walker, who is like the Harriet Tubman of beauty, and her products just got re-released. So anyway, so that's why I did it in March. But I did it because I needed to heal. I needed to start another conversation, because I can't stop this other one. We're gonna talk about this, y'all. We're gonna talk about what happened so this generation can do it differently. But in the meantime, I am not gonna be broken. And I am not gonna be bitter. And I'm not going to, my grandmother left this earth in fear she lived in Philadelphia and was afraid of lynching. in Philadelphia. My grandfather, till he died, would not stop for a sandwich until he got to, like, after Washington, D.C., you don't stop. You drive your car through Virginia, you just drive. I ain't going out like that. So part of that is the way that we heal is to tell the truth and tell our stories. So what I'm gonna show you, one of them, I did 6 formal ones, and then I have another sort of more community-based one. But this one is Patrice Collars, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter. What is magic about Black girl hair?
Black girl hair is magic because it can do literally everything. I mean, seriously, our hair is like shapeshifters. We have the most resilient hair ever. My hairdresser used to come to my house every 2 weeks and press my hair out. And one day I said to my mom, I don't want to do this anymore. My mother would keep us home until she can get our hair done. We were poor. And to be poor and Black and visibly poor and Black is taboo. For her, if her Black girls didn't have that sort of ideal beauty standard, then it would reflect badly on her. And I think she felt guilty and she felt bad. And so I remember her putting money away just so we can have her hair done. And I just remember feeling like there has to be more than my hair. I started reading bell hooks. I started reading Audre Lorde. I started looking up other images of Black women, and I was like, I think I can pull this off. I went to a barbershop and I told them to shave it all off. I want to go bald, and I went bald, and that was amazing. It was scary. It was definitely scary. Why did I just do this? And it was also the most exciting feeling ever because it was the first time in my life that I didn't feel like my hair was a thing that I was leading with. It was so many other things, and it changed me.
So with Patrice, ultimately that story was about liberation, being liberated from her hair. That's who she is walking through the world as an activist. So that's kind of what these stories are about, is this one little story, but it revealing their humanity or who they are through the world. So since March, I've been better. Rachel doesn't get on my nerves the same way. Also, ain't nobody studying her. She's gone doing something. Oh, she's sneaking around Howard University. Did you all see that? Oh my God, she is crazy. So but aside from it being funny, there was also this idea that one crazy white girl could get Black intellects coming out of the woodwork to defend our identity. I resented that to the one person. Like I said, she wasn't having a Caitlyn Jenner moment. There's no, bodies of trans people that stood on the line for her. She's one crazy chick. I'm still talking about her at Creative Mornings. So it wasn't about I should thank her, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be doing this right. She has a purpose in this life. We all do. We have a purpose. We have a story. I know she got a story. But I don't know how much time. We have 15 minutes. I would love to, have some kind of conversation with y'all. 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 Kind of conversation.